is up, everybody? This is Mean Dean from the Kliq Podcast. Back here with you with Mean Dean's A through Z pay-per-view review. Today, the B stands for WCW BattleBowl 1993. This one was a crazy one. Crazy concept, crazy wrestlers. Definitely want to get into this one. It's going to get a little bit confusing. It basically follows the same path as if you were to follow a Royal Rumble, except you make the entire Royal Rumble match during the pay-per-view. Everybody gets qualified. It's super crazy, so I definitely want to jump into that. But before I do not forget we are on Podomatic, iTunes, YouTube. My man JG is holding it down on YouTube. We are on Patreon. Officially now, we are on Stitcher, which is a huge win for us as well. And we're also on Twitch. We're going to be putting some content on there as well. So definitely check us out. And of course, don't forget to check us out. WrestleMania weekend, 4 hours before the show, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Your boys from the KliqPod family, JG and Mean Dean, will have our live WrestleMania 34 pay-per-view pre-show. Make sure you're there. Make sure you comment. Be as interactive as possible. Tell us we're wrong. Haters are welcome. We love the haters. All right, WCW BattleBowl 1993. Crazy concept. First, it starts out with Mean Gene Okerlund, and we have talked about how I have taken his name as a sort of homage to Mean Gene, Mean Dean. Okerlund has to pick a couple names out of a spinner, and he's also with Fifi at the time, is Ric Flair's valet. I will get into this more later, but I have never seen Mean Gene perv out the way I have seen him like the king. It was the weirdest thing ever. It was disgusting. And he really played it up. Almost every shot he was in, he made some sort of sexual innuendo towards Fifi. It was interesting. Okay, it's super interesting. So Okerlund has to pick names out of a spinner. Fifi is there. Now, the rules to BattleBowl. Out of the spinner, Mean Gene is going to pick 4 names. Why they're split up on video, I'm not entirely sure, into different locker rooms. 4 wrestlers' names. The first 2 names will form a tag team. The second 2 names will form a tag team. The winners of that match will go on to BattleBowl. BattleBowl is an over-the-top Royal Rumble type match. Then there's a BattleBowl champion. So there's no title on the line, no number one contendership, but it is a crazy concept. It's a pretty cool concept. So the first names picked out of the spinner. Match number 1, Cactus Jack and Vader versus Stevie Ray, and I believe they called him Kane, or Cade at the time, and Charlie Norris, and I'm not familiar on who Charlie Norris is. Clearly, he wasn't effective enough for me or anybody else to remember. I was immediately intrigued by this match, because if there's one, besides the typical ones, but if there is one rivalry that stands out in my mind, in early ECW, pre-Nitro, it's Cactus Jack and Vader. And they hated each other. In fact, they beat the shit out of each other constantly. I mean, it was... I can't tell you how many matches it was, and I don't know officially off the top of my head, but I'd have to say between Japan and WCW, Cactus Jack and Vader had to have wrestled each other at least 70 or 80 times. That's just my guess. And if anybody wants to fact check it, go for it. I feel like I'm in the ballpark. But they were brutal matches. So if you want to say, arguably, if there's any matches that shaved years off Mick Foley's career, these 80-some matches, more or less, probably did 40% of the damage that, like, Hell in a Cell with Taker did. That's how brutal they were. Race, and for those of you who don't know who Harley Race is, he's one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. Triple H has basically modeled his career around him. Harley Race is the manager of Vader. And Harley just keeps screaming at Vader, you have to get along with Cactus, you have to get along with him. And as soon as they go out, because there's no entrance music, they just walk out to the ring as soon as their name's called. And Vader and Cactus just start fighting each other. And they're tag team partners. They just start going at it. It was pretty awesome. It was really cool to see. And they were really firing off some shots. This is probably my first look at Charlie Norris as well. But as they start to get into the ring, between Cactus and Vader, as soon as they're done fighting, honestly, there's just amazing chemistry between the two. It shows in their singles matches. why wouldn't it show in their tag team match? And this Charlie Norris, he is just terrible. He's missing spots. And there's a couple times where I thought maybe he was out on his feet as well, because it looked like he got knocked out and he wasn't really understanding the flow of the match, didn't understand where he was supposed to be, and he was bleeding from the mouth. So all signs point to either very, very terrible and or out on his feet. And I wanted to kind of go back to what I was saying about Stevie Ray. If anything should ring your bell in terms of who Stevie Ray is in WCW, Harlem Heat would be the next two words I'd put together. Harlem Heat, one of the best tag teams of all time. Championship-wise, not so much. Great chemistry. But they called them Kane and Cole, or Cade and Cole. Those were Stevie Ray and Booker T's names back then in Harlem Heat. That was early WCW. Vader botched a powerbomb right at the end on Norris, but he got that dub. And Vader just is, I said it in one of my last reviews, and I'll say it again, just a super impressive guy, super impressive athlete. Definitely tell that carrying all that weight, putting through all those matches, things like that, I mean, that put a lot of toll on his knees. I met Vader at one point here in Denver, Colorado. He is from Boulder. I got to talk to him for a minute. It was around the time where I met Doink and Honky Tonk and Lashley. Honestly, those guys will go anywhere at this point, except for Doink. Rest in peace. Cactus, Vader got that dub there, moving on to BattleBowl. Okerlund's still having kind of a weird, I just can't even explain it. You have to go back and watch BattleBowl, not for the matches, just to see Mean Gene Okerlund act like Jerry the King Lawler and perv out on Fifi. Said he was like, she was good enough to eat or something. That was like one of the first comments. Boom. Sexual harassment. Match number 2 and the other 4 names pulled. Paul Roma, again, Power and Glory in WWE. And Eric Watts versus Johnny B. Bad / Mark Marrow. And Brian Knobbs of the Nasty Boys. Immediately, this was a different feeling from the last match, because the last match I was really excited. This match, not so much. Love the Nasty Boys, and that's about it. But it was just Knobbs from the Nasty Boys. So it was basically just Hulk Hogan's friend. Part of my notes, wow, super boring match. Literally every other move is a double axe handle or a hold or an arm drag. Repeat. That is Golden Age wrestling at its best. The story really had to carry the match itself, because the matches were not always the most exciting. They don't do that so much now because the matches are exciting, for the most part. Winner, Johnny B. Bad, Brian Knobbs, they didn't get along together. Pretty much every match here, prior to BattleBowl, was tag teams arguing with each other. That's pretty much it. But you should go back and check it out. Mean Gene Okerlund. Match number 3 and the additional 4 names pulled out. The Shockmaster, which was Tugboat or Typhoon in WWE. I don't know if you guys have seen it. However, there's a GIF somewhere, everywhere, really everywhere, showing the introduction of the Shockmaster basically falling through a wall and wearing a bedazzled Stormtrooper helmet. I would recommend going to check that out. The Shockmaster, and now he's wearing, oh, by the way, in the Shockmaster, basically, as soon as he comes out, he's wearing a hard hat. So now it's a completely different character from what it is, but this is like a much fatter version of Typhoon / Tugboat / the Shockmaster. So Shockmaster teamed up with Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff, and they took on the team of Ricky Steamboat and William Regal. So as soon as I heard Ricky Steamboat and William Regal, I was like, great. It's going to be a great match. I'm really high up on William Regal right now in WCW. Amazing character, amazing talent. Already looking forward to it. Orndorff and Steamboat really ran the pace of this. They had some great exchanges. There's a lot of great stories. Paul Orndorff really set the tone for the heel side. And Ricky doesn't have to do anything but just go beat some ass. That's all he's got to do. And that's what's really great about Ricky Steamboat, is he just lets his wrestling do the talking. There's very few guys who can do that. Daniel Bryan being number 1, CM Punk. CM Punk does have the other side well put down, but you get my drift. Ricky tags in Regal, and one of my favorite things that William Regal did was wipe his hand off as soon as Ricky Steamboat tagged him. It was actually really funny. And there you go. Now you got a winner, but it is not Ricky Steamboat and William Regal. Unfortunately, I would have loved to see them go. The Shockmaster and Paul Orndorff move forward to BattleBowl, and we're back to Okerlund perving out again. He did, however, cut a break, did an interview. This was the setup for Starrcade 1993, and at the time, Vader was world champ. So Ric Flair came in and said, I will put on my career. I will never wrestle again if I don't beat you at Starrcade. And so that's the match. They made the big match. Flair, Vader, Starrcade. Can't wait to get to that one. Match number 4 for the tag team. The other 4 names they pulled out. Awesome Kong and the Equalizer versus King Kong and Dustin Rhodes. I refer you back to one of my previous podcasts that says they basically created these wonky ass characters with no fucking talent, and everybody gets to suffer for that. Who the fuck calls themselves the Equalizer? Like, was that Dusty's doing? Was Dusty the one back there running promos and saying, okay, we're doing talent management now, and you're the Equalizer? Basically, no marketability whatsoever. On paper, this match sucks. I mean, that's the first thing I said. One thing I did want to add, though, is that one of the guys' names was Awesome Kong. For those of you who watch TNA, you will know that there is a woman wrestler named Awesome Kong. This is not the same person. Also known as Karma in WWE. Definitely not the same person. Totally different guy. And really coming from a fat guy, this is just another perspective. It is really interesting to see how many fat and out of shape wrestlers were at that pay-per-view event. Like, I'm starting to wonder, like, why am I not getting paid to just start throwing double axe handles? I could definitely put somebody in a headlock and maybe throw some chops. I'd definitely do that. I could have been in BattleBowl 93, just it was ahead of my time, unfortunately. And this is also around the time where Dustin Rhodes, if you remember listening to my Bash at the Beach 1994 review, they're just really trying to push Dustin Rhodes. The problem is in WCW, he had a very low amount of charisma. That's the issue. So it was surprising to me to see him go to WWE and become Goldust. Goldust has an amazing amount of charisma. Interesting point there. Your winner, King Kong and Dustin Rhodes. There you go, pushing Dustin. One other note I wanted to make for the Mean Gene Okerlund Fifi angle is that Fifi looks a lot like Blue Pants. If any of you know exactly what I'm talking about, I'd suggest going online, Googling Blue Pants. It's like looks like her mother. It's the weirdest thing. Match number 5, the next 4 competitors. Sting tags up with Sags from the Nasty Boys versus Ron Simmons and Heath Cole. Heath Cole, another guy I don't really know very much of. Love Ron Simmons. Probably, arguably one of my favorite black wrestlers of all time would be Ron Simmons. I think, honestly, he should have had a run much higher up than WWE ever pushed, than WCW ever pushed. Fun fact, first black world champion ever, period, in wrestling. But then again, it is Sting, too, so I was really excited to see Sting. Unfortunately, this match was probably the most boring match of the night. Surprisingly, 2 Hall of Famers in wrestling, and it was still the most boring match of the night, unfortunately. Winner, Sting, Sags, they move on to BattleBowl. Match number 6, I believe this was probably match of the night. It was Stunning Steve Austin and Ric Flair versus Max Payne and Too Cold Scorpio. That is a hell of a pairing right there. Stunning Steve Austin, Stone Cold Steve Austin, he grew up, became the greatest wrestler of all time. Ric Flair, Golden Age, greatest wrestler of all time. So that's an amazing pairing right there. Max Payne is a fucking terrible... He's not terrible. His character is terrible. He's actually a decent wrestler. He's a big guy. And then Too Cold Scorpio, if anybody knows Too Cold, ECW, WWE, WCW, he's a journeyman. Probably one of the most recognizable journeymen in wrestling. And really, Too Cold held his own in this. But I was definitely interested in this match because of the people who were in it, especially Stunning Steve tagging with Ric Flair. Flair and Austin, though, in this match, just played out their characters so well. If anything, they weren't attempting to tell a story, but they told it, showing that Steve was trying to be better than Rick, but everybody knew Rick was the best at that time specifically. And Steve did a great job being a heel and trying to get in Rick's face and show him up. Too Cold, like I said, just really holding it down in this match. Max Payne came in to do some spots, some heavy hitting, but Too Cold is an athletic guy. I highly recommend checking him out. Google him. Most of the match, though, is just very character driven in this case. Just a lot of arguing, just similar to the other ones. This was a great match. Match of the night. A lot of back and forth, a lot of great exchanges. Your winners, who else would it be? The 2 greatest wrestlers of all time, Ric Flair, Stunning Steve Austin, and we move forward. Match number 7. This one was a strange one. This was Rick Rude and Shanghai Pierce versus Marcus Bagwell, or Buff Bagwell as you know him, and Tex Slashinger. Shanghai Pierce and Tex Slashinger. What was really funny about this is these two guys had masks on, but I knew it was the Godwins. And if you've ever watched wrestling, probably WWE 1995, that's where you'd see the Godwins, who are just these hillbilly guys, this tag team. They're a good tag team, and they'd carry a slop bucket and things like that. This is the same guys. They're in the same tag team, but they're fighting against each other. It's just really interesting. And then also, Tex, who is Tex Slashinger, he's the one who actually became Midian in the Ministry later on in the late 90s. What was funny is when Tex was coming down, he said, "I don't know who's picking, but they're going to pay." And I'm like, dude, they film Mean Gene perving out on Fifi, and then they pick the names. You know exactly who's picking the names. Not only that, but let's just say you weren't watching anything. You could hear them announce your name. Mean Gene clearly announces your name. And really, though, this is around the time I didn't know how to feel about Rick. Rick was jacked, as he always was. But sometimes, you know, when you see somebody and you're like, is this the time where they were just really into drugs? Or is this the time where they were just really off their rocker? It seems like this could have been the time that Rick wasn't doing so hot. But man, great character, great wrestler. He was even yelling motherfucker in the ring, or shut the fuck up. And you could clearly hear it. I mean, for Golden Age Wrestling, yeah, well, it could get crazy sometimes. The fans were pretty docile. And it was pretty funny to hear him shout that stuff out. Your winner, Rick Rude, Shanghai Pierce. Not a great match. I was really excited to see Rick move on. Match number 8 and the last tag team match for the qualifiers for Battle Bowl. Hawk from the Road Warriors, right? And Rip Rogers, who's basically a WCW early jobber, versus the British Bulldog and Booker T, or Cole, as they put him. Super sloppy match. Not a good match at all. Rip Rogers basically was out from the beginning. He just got his ass kicked before everybody got in the ring, then came in the ring at the end. Hawk threw Rip Rogers onto, I believe it was at the time, British Bulldog, got the win, or as Booker T got the win. So Hawk and Rip Rogers, a jobber and a half a tag team guy who's better in a tag team, are now in Battle Bowl. Match number 9 and the last match would be the Battle Bowl match of the 16-man over-the-top Royal Rumble, with the winner becoming the champion of Battle Bowl. Now, what was interesting about this, and if you have seen early wrestling, especially WCW, they would have the ramp at match level. They'd have the ramp at ring level, where you could just easily step in. If you got thrown out of the ring over the top rope, and you landed on the ramp, you were not eliminated. But if you got thrown over the top rope, out of the ring, and hit the mat down below, then you would be eliminated. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And this was around the time, as I had mentioned, that Flair and Vader were starting to build up for Starrcade, so Vader just put Flair's ass out big time. I didn't record all the eliminations. We all know who they're going to come down to. Final 4 being, if I'm not mistaken, it was Vader, Flair, Austin, and Dustin, maybe? I didn't write that down. As Flair is out on the ramp, getting attended to by medical and getting put on a stretcher, literally Stunning Steve Austin is wooing right in his face. Perfect heel. Still a great heel back then. Not sure what they didn't see marketability-wise. I thought Stunning Steve Austin was awesome. And you gotta love the 90s. It was probably my favorite decade of all time, next to the 80s. But not just wrestling-wise, just in general. And the fans are chanting, "Whoop, there it is." It was pretty awesome to see. It's just like, you tell the cultural difference between back then and now. Oh, Sting was the 4th guy. Sorry about that. So Sting was the 4th guy. Great exchange with all the remaining. Sting, Austin, Vader. If you put those 3 in a triple threat match, I'd be money. 100%. I would book them in Starrcade as a main event for the world title. Super awesome. Austin got thrown out. Sting and Vader remain. Sting looked like he was going to hold on to it, but Vader ended up becoming Battle Bowl champion. And that is it for WCW Battle Bowl 1993. Do not forget to check out my man JG's Raw and SmackDown reviews. We're making big moves here. We got new thumbnails. We got a website. We're on Twitch. We're on Patreon. We're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, Podomatic. Please go visit us. We're the best podcast out there for wrestling. Don't forget to like, subscribe. It's a good one.